I would like to introduce Samantha Dunn. Samantha is the author of several books. She is also a teacher, and she teaches an undergrad course at Chapman. She teaches writing by writers in the Writing by Writers program, and she also teaches private workshops. She is also the director of the Writers Camp at Esalen University in Big Sur. I don't know how you do all the other things, because on top of that, she is at the Southern California News Group, an editor of our specialty publications. So with that, I would love to introduce Samantha Dunn. Welcome.
Thank you, Julie. And the answer to that is I have no free weekend. Yeah. And anyway, welcome, valuable subscribers, and thank you for supporting this program and the other programs throughout the summer with our special hostess, the amazing entertainer, the commentator and author most recently of Madwoman and the Roomba, my friend Sandra Tsing Loh. Hello, Sandra.
Hello, Samantha. How are you? I can't believe we made it. 8 shows in this series.
I know. I actually washed my hair today, so that was a special thing.
I did also, but you appear to have blow dried your hair, which is a step I forgot. So we're just going to enjoy where we are today. And that's what, if we were in a writers group, and we have been writers groups together, people do come as they are, however they are.
Absolutely.
And that's sort of going to be the theme today as we talk to people who are great writers, but also know a bit about the creative process as well. And I think it's interesting because we started with male authors on the first series. It just happened to fall that way because scheduling, and we're ending with all women. So the women are going to have the last word.
I love that. I always love that. And we're going to be supplying some great avenues for people who are interested in writing and who are interested in continuing the conversation about being a literary citizen. So I'm excited for today.
Yeah, because I think actually a lot of viewers who are avid readers, and also they had some interesting writing questions. I remember, like with Michael Connolly, people are going, well, how do I write about like a best-selling crime novel? And he goes, character. You know, so we've had some interesting discussions thus far about their processes, and today will be no exception. And I'm going to ask you to kind of co-host with me today, because you know, so you have intricate relationships with some of our authors today. So stay aboard.
Okay, I'm not signing out today.
And so on that note, I'm going to bring up our first guest, Pam Houston. And for those who don't know, here is the 30-second download on Pam. Pam Houston is the author of the memoir Deep Creek, Finding Hope in the High Country, and 2 novels, Contents May Have Shifted and Sighthound, 2 collections of short stories, Cowboys Are My Weakness, that was the first, and that was put her on the map, and Waltzing the Cat, and a collection of essays, A Little More About Me, all published by W.W. Norton. Her stories have been selected for volumes for the O. Henry Awards, the Pushcart Prize, Best American Travel Writing, Best American Short Stories of the Century, among other anthologies. She's the winner of the Western States Book Award. We don't always say the awards, the Willow Award for Contemporary Fiction, but when you win an award called the Evil Companions Literary Award, we kind of have to add that. And she has also been called the Rodeo Queen of American Letters by our very own Sam Dunn. Now I hear, okay, so tell me where Pam is coming to us from right now.
Yeah, well, Pam actually is coming to us. Usually she lives at the headwaters of the Rio Grande in Colorado, but today she's coming from a friend of ours home in Santa Fe. And I just have to mention, speaking of Santa Fe, Pam teaches in the low-res MFA program at the Institute of American Arts in Santa Fe. She's also a professor of English at UC Davis. She is the co-founder and creative director of the literary nonprofit Writing by Writers, which Julie mentioned earlier, where I teach sometimes as well. And she's just an all-around awesome mentor in person. So hi, Pam.
Hi, Sam.
Pam. Hey, welcome. So I'm going to ask sort of one question at the top to set up some themes, and then we're just going to talk from there. I mean, I think that thinking back to Cowboys Are My Weakness, which was your first book. You're a debut book writer, you know, kind of like barely out of school, actually still in school, I believe. And when I remember you said in your latest book, the professor at the University of Utah who said, here are my rules for this writing class, right? No trees, no snow, no mountains, no skiing, no eyes, no tears, and no female body secretions. And of course, you went to put all of those in your book. The rest was history. I mean, I wonder if you would muse a little bit about what it was like when you started writing, and then from that arc to become an acclaimed writer and also a teacher yourself. I'm sure you don't give that directive in your class, although it may be.
No, I try to say there's no rules except possibly adverbs in dialogue attributions. Everything else is available for use. No, I came out of a very dysfunctional household, kicking and screaming, and I went to grad school the same way. So pretty much anyone who told me what I couldn't do, that's what I was going to do. It happened that those were my subjects: mountains, snow, trees, skiing, female bodily excretions. That was pretty much my subject matter. And, of course, now 30 years later, I've grown up a little, and I'm, I try to be more self-reflective, and I try to be self-incriminating, and I try to be more compassionate to people who disagree with me. Hopefully we get there in our 50s, but I'm still writing, the story I want to tell. And that's led to a lot of fights with a lot of editors and a lot of things over the years. But one of the reasons, I love to teach. I love to teach writing. It's really my greatest joy. But one extra benefit of it is that I don't have to always rely on doing the thing that the publisher wants me to do, right? Because I have this other source of income. And so I feel like I haven't totally given up the kicking, screaming part of myself.
Well, if I can just ask, what do you feel sometimes is the story your publisher wants you to tell, and what is the story that you want to tell? And how can that sometimes be in conflict?
I don't really believe in linear time. I make work by collecting all these pieces of the concrete physical world and bringing them to the page and mixing them around. I don't really believe in a narrative that goes, this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and therefore this happened. That's not the house I grew up in. The house I grew up in, nothing ever happened as a result of anything else. And you had to always be ready for the unexpected. And I think I build narrative that way. So I'm always kind of pushing against linearity. I'm always kind of pushing a little bit against resolution, too much of it, which I also don't totally believe in. So I'm not an experimentalist by any stretch of the imagination, but I do believe in a shattered narrative, and I believe a little more in associative meaning making rather than logical meaning making or chronological meaning making. And that doesn't always go over that well.
But it's so great to read going into the past and the present. And I love what you described, something you called the glimmer. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So can you tell the audience?
Yeah, that's kind of the heart of my teaching, is that our first job as writers is to go out in the world and pay strict attention with all of our senses wide open, not just visual. Of course, the bulk of it is visual, but also our ears open, our taste buds open, textures, all of it, and wait for something that resonates. Wait for something that says, hey, writer over here. And when I feel that feeling, which is kind of a real resonance, a bodily resonance, I know that's a thing. If I can carve that out of the world and bring it to the computer and write it down, it will be something that allows me to tell a story. And this is why I don't believe in linearity, at least not in the creation process, because what I'm doing when I'm writing a first draft is just looking at all these little pieces of glimmering things that I've brought. And when I say glimmer, I don't mean pretty. It can be terrible. It can be ugly. I just mean it has this vibrational resonance that makes me know I can use it to unlock some part of my interior landscape. And that's really my writing process. That's really it. Then there's a lot of revision, but in terms of creation, I'm bringing all these glimmers. I have, 30,000 glimmers in my computer. I'm bringing all these glimmers. And when I have a writing day, I sit down and I say, okay, which ones of these feel like pushing on a bruise? Which ones of these make me happy? Which ones of these feel like they want to come out and create some sort of frisson together? That's how I make a first draft.
One more question. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's great. I was just going to say, sometimes it's hard to get from that to linearity.
One more quick question before and Samantha, we don't use the word pivot anymore. I heard you tweet. So you live on a 120-acre ranch and you take care of it. So, and I think that people ask, we're always curious how you arrange your writing day or writing time with your work on the ranch and your writing, how you balance that.
Well, I have people who help me with the animals, usually. Not a lot of people, but I usually have a house sitter. I'm married. My husband's great with the animals. But I am not a writer who writes every day. And as I said before, teaching and this organization I founded that Sam mentioned, that takes up so much of my time and my days. You know, I teach in 2 graduate programs. And so I'm always reading student manuscripts, you know, so really my writing doesn't so much have to work around the animals as it has to work around my dedication to my students' work, which is really the center of my life now. You know, I believe that the young writers are going to get us out of this mess, maybe. And so I'm dedicated first to helping their books get in the world. And then, you know, and then I have time to write, you know, in and out, in and around, but that's the main thing that occupies my time.
Sam?
I just wanted to jump in too, and Pam, can you talk about what you've done with Writing by Writers during the pandemic? I love some of the things that you've added to open the conversation up for everybody, because I swear everyone, Pam Houston is one of the best literary citizens on the planet, as are a few of the other people, as are all of the other people here tonight. But please just talk about that for a minute, Pam.
Sure. Well, I co-founded Writing by Writers with my business partner, Karen Nelson, about 10 years ago. And our idea was that we wanted to create a writing community that was separate from the university. I teach at 2 universities. I don't have anything against them, but there's so many people who are intimidated by the university or aren't doing that kind of writing. So we started Writing by Writers as a way to offer everything from you know, a weekend of generative exercises to manuscript boot camp where you bring 300 pages and 4 other people read it. And so we just grew slowly. We tried to meet the needs of community members. And when I say community, I mean the national community who wanted to write. And then as soon as COVID hit, you know, Karen and I got on the phone and we knew we were going to have to cancel some events, but we were like, okay, what do we do? How do we help? And we knew that many of our teachers, our regular teachers who are all writers, had books coming out in the summer or spring. And so we thought, well, we'll do a reading series on Thursday nights. And so every Thursday night we have an amazing reading series, free to all. You just have to go to it's writingxwriters.org and RSVP and you'll get a note. And we also started a Monday night craft class where we asked all these same writers to teach craft. We asked them to ask the attendees, which number in the hundreds, to support their particular favorite independent bookstore. So we just did everything we could to try to keep independent bookstores alive, make up for canceled book tours in any way we could, and just get together every Thursday night, which we do, to hear great work and interviews with these writers.
Quick reader question from Sally Terwilliger. Love reading your books. So wonderful, so beautiful your work is. The contents may have shifted. There were so many amazing adventures. I have to ask, are any of these adventures taken from your life or the lives of your friends?
They're all taken from my life. All of my fiction is heavily autobiographical. I guess we call that autofiction now, which I'm sort of happy about because I feel legitimized by this name, autofiction. So yeah, all of the adventures and contents may have shifted were mine, you know, with probably slight exaggerations or shifting around, you know, just because the work demanded it and it is a novel. But no, all of those adventures are mine, and in Cowboys likewise. And anything else that says the word fiction on it, you can be pretty sure it happened to me.
Okay, so we have the information where people can go to research that, right, Samantha? So it's in the it's in the thread. And thank you so much for this quick visit. We're so happy to have you. Your writing is fantastic, and you're so beloved, deservedly. So thank you, Pam Houston. Her wonderful new memoir, Deep Creek: Finding Hope in the High Country, was actually just published last year by W.W. Norton. So good, it's fantastic, and just to see how these threads are pulled together in all the glimmers, it's really fantastic. It's been, so thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Sandra, and thank you, Sam. Love you.
Love you. See you later.
Next, Janet Fitch comes to visit us. The 30-second download on Janet Fitch. Janet Fitch is the author of the #1 national bestseller, White Oleander, a novel translated into 24 languages, an Oprah Book Club book, and the basis of a feature film. Painted Black, also widely translated, made into a 2017 film, and also she's written 2 epic novels of the Russian Revolution, The Revolution of Marina M. and Chimes of a Lost Cathedral. Also, she's written a young adult novel, Kicks, short stories, essays, articles, reviews, etc. She was a 2009 Likhachev Cultural Fellow in St. Petersburg, Russia, which is the Russian emphasis, Helen R. Whitley Fellow, Research Fellow at the Huntington Library and Moseley Fellow at Pomona College, graduated from Reed College with a BA in history. Very interesting. And Sam, you want to jump in on the teaching part?
Oh man, where do I start?
I know, it's
Janet,
like...
Yeah, I mean, Janet is not only a fantastic, well-loved novelist, but she's also a well-loved instructor. She taught for 14 years in the USC Master of Professional Writing program. She's been a longtime teacher at the Squaw Valley Community of Writers, at the UCLA Writers Program, Pomona College. I don't know, Janet, you can clear this up if I've missed anything big, but one of the things I want you guys to know about is that she also dispenses brilliant free writing advice in an ongoing series on YouTube called Writing Wednesday. So welcome, my dear friend.
Hey.
Hello, Janet. It's so great to see you. I actually want to go backwards for a moment to growing up as a girlhood, but because you're answering, there has been a question that's hanging out from Kathleen Matthews. So why don't we just open with that before going back? And that question is, and that's very commonly asked, how do you overcome writer's block?
Well, writer's block is fear. It's fear of not being, that what you're going to produce is not going to be as good as what you imagine or hope that it's going to be. And all writers go through this. And the important thing to remember is it's never going to be as good as the book in your head because that book is perfect. So you have to remember that everything in the physical world is imperfect, but it has the advantage of the fact that it exists.
Wow, you just blew my mind.
Right.
I haven't even had that much Chardonnay.
You have to wrap your head around the fact that it's going to be imperfect. It's never going to be as good as the daydream. It's also harder to work through.
If you can tell a little bit about your writer's journey, growing up as a girl, what first inspired you, and then I think it's great for people to know, like the overnight success of White Oleander, right? You just wrote it in a summer. Of what that journey was to become the writer you are, and I love Jim Crusoe appearing in that also. So
It is a long and painful journey. I did not do a program. I just learned in bits and pieces, like people, for the most part used to. I was a history major. I probably would have become a writer much earlier. I was an early reader. I kind of lived in my books. I didn't like the real world all that much. It was all thou shalt not. You're a little girl and everybody tells you what you can't be and can't do and blah, blah, blah. I get sick of it. In your books, you could be anything, And I tried to write when I was in elementary school. I had a teacher who didn't like me very much, and I wanted to impress her. I wrote a book, a long story for, a fourth grader, combining my two favorite novelists, Marguerite Henry, who wrote all those horse books, Misty of Chincoteague and so forth, and Edgar Allan Poe. So it was called Diamond Horse of Mystery. And I gave it to this woman who hated me, no idea why at the time. And she took a red marker and she gave it a good going over. And I didn't write again until I was 21. I became a history major in college because history was sort of a backdoor into writing. It was character, it was drama, it was, bringing a reader in to a world, making it vivid. So it was my back door. And then when I was 21, I decided I was going to be a writer. And true to myself, I make a declaration of what I'm going to do well in advance of being able to do it. I often would get a job and then lie my way in and quickly have to learn how to do it. It seems to be my pattern. So I have to like kind of clear out space for myself first. And then I step up and learn how to do it. So I decided I was going to be a writer at 21. And then I had to learn how to write. Got a lot of rejection. There's stuff, just picking up information here and there, little extension classes, reading books and doing everything wrong, doing everything wrong. And I had written for about 10 years, getting not one short story published in 10 years. And so that's sending out stuff every week. I was good at certain things, but I knew there was something I didn't understand. Why do I keep getting rejected? What is this? Hundreds of rejections. And I sent something into the Santa Monica Review. These literary journals is where writers, you're going to see literature created. First time, these people are going to be in the journals. So if you like to be on top of things, check them out. So Santa Monica Review had an editor, Jim Crusoe, and usually your rejections are very impersonal form. They don't want to hear from you again. It's like, oh, it's away. But he was a very generous guy. And he wrote to me and he said, good enough story, but what's unique about your sentences? My sentences? What the heck did that mean? I was a history major, what in the heck did he mean? You want me to put all the adjectives at the end, Does he want me to start off everything with B? What the heck does that mean? I gotta say, I'm kind of a peasant, and it took me at least 6 weeks to figure out what the heck he meant. I had read beautiful writing, but I had never really thought about how that was created. But I finally got it, that it wasn't enough to create interesting characters, an interesting story, that the reader actually reads a story one sentence at a time. The experience of your work is a sentence and another sentence. And that there's a skill, there's a craft, there's an art, and that's where the art is in the sentence. So I looked around for a teacher who had language, who had a beautiful music to the language, a writer named Kate Braverman. And she had been a poet. And poets can't win it with a car chase or a love scene. They win it one word up against another. And that's what I needed. That's the Himalayas. I'd gotten to the foothills really. And then I was like, there's a little bit more to do here. And that's where I met Samantha Dunn, because she was in that workshop.
Yes. Do you remember?
It was the turning point, I think, in our life and many other writers. Tell them a little bit more about the trial by fire that Janet's class was, though. I mean, her favorite
case class. This woman was a very this woman was absolutely devoted to the language, to literature, to the creation of great literature. She didn't care about you and your feelings at all. She was defending literature against you. And if she could get you to stop writing and stop massacring the English language and stop boring the reader, she would. So she was, when, if you ever read Carlos Castaneda, Adventures of Don Juan is this, this sorcerer, and Casanova is terrified of him. He is a terrifying guy. And there's another guy who's also a teacher of this tradition who everybody loves him. He's so much fun. All the students have such a great time. And Casanova asked Don Juan, it's like, why do I have you and not that guy? And Don Juan says, this is your luck of the draw. This is who I am. And it doesn't mean I'm a better teacher, worse teacher than this guy. It just means this is my personality. And so Kate Braverman was a very harsh teacher. But when she loved something, if you had done something beautiful, she told you. It was praise beyond praise. And then if you didn't hit the mark, then you were savaged.
And you were savaged. I just have to jump in. Remember, she'd swing her hair over and she'd say, "This is a crime against the page."
She thought mediocrity was evil and should be stamped out.
Yes, we'd have to stand in a circle, remember, and make a vow to combat mediocrity. Do you remember?
I don't recall that,
Wow.
but I'm sure that it was true, and that's good training for a writer. I mean, it's painful as all hell, but if you do something that cliche-ridden, trite, etc., and somebody just savages you for it, you don't do it again. I don't do that to my students. I don't have the heart,
Right, and that is what you've taken. You are not doing that, but you do. It seems you do focus on language when you teach. And
absolutely.
I wonder if you could give like that example, the getting up at dawn example.
This is, we were very much, and Pam Houston also brought this up, that observation, Carlos Williams says observation is the first act of the imagination, close observation. And the kind of school that Sam and I come out of through the Braverman workshop was about sense observation, because what that does is it puts the reader in the body of the character. So you're not looking at the character behaving, you are physically in the body. So when people say, my God, I felt like I was inside that novel, I felt I was that character, this is how the writer does that, is using the senses. So when I teach, I make sure that the students have to actually engage with physical reality. There's no such thing as dry labbing, which means back in college, the students who would do experiments in their chemistry class, and they know how it's supposed to turn out, and they don't actually do the experiment, they just write it up as if they had, that's called dry labbing. You do it without getting wet. Nothing gets wet. Well, in writing, you have to get wet. You have to get out from behind a screen and go out into the world and engage. So I would have people observe the weather, to go outside at different times of day and describe the light, the way the light is creating objects visually, the smells, the sounds. How is 6 o'clock in the morning different than 3 o'clock in the afternoon in the same place? How is 3 o'clock on a Saturday different than 3 o'clock on a Monday? The audio is very different, summer and winter. So, I try to get the writer to engage in the actual world, so that when we're all living in a jar, we have notebooks. We actually have a record of our sense impressions that we can turn to and go, God, what is January like in Colorado or wherever you're at, in LA? And you can go to the notebooks and remember, oh yeah, that's right, I remember.
That is so fantastic, and you can see why people flock to the Wednesday. It's the Wednesday series, correct? So
yeah, I do something called Writing Wednesday on my Facebook author page live, so you can interact with me every Wednesday at noon on my Facebook author page, and then I have a friend who puts it up on my YouTube. So there's a YouTube channel if you're not on Facebook, many people aren't. that's just Janet Fitch's Writing Wednesdays, that has about 60 or 65 of these fireside chats.
Oh, that's so fantastic. Thank you so much, Janet Fitch, author and teacher. Again, the two latest books are the epic novels of the Russian Revolution, The Revolution of Marina M, and Chimes of a Lost Cathedral. And with that, Samantha,
Thank you for having me.
well, we're welcoming a former workshop attendee of yours. Yes, or even could be.
Yeah, you know, our next guest is Amy Wallen, and I wanted to talk to Amy not only because I love Amy and she's brilliant, but it goes to show you the connectedness of the writing community. Janet and I became friends together in that Kate Braverman writing workshop, and then Amy started working, I think, Amy, you'll correct this, you started working with a writer in San Diego. Janet came down to do something in San Diego. You started working with Janet, and here you are now. You're the assistant director of the New York State Summer Writers Institute, and you also teach at your home, an amazing series, kind of fireside chats with Amy and workshops at her home. There's always pie. And anyway, I just wanted to talk to you about that and have us all find out a little bit more about what makes Amy Amy and some of your writing wisdom.
Oh, thanks, Sam. I appreciate it. And yes, I am a Janet Fitch graduate, I suppose. And so many things Janet was saying, I was like, oh, I remember that. And then some more things came to me that I remember from that class that I share with my students now. And I always say, well, Janet Fitch used to say. That's how I preface them. But yes, I went to a workshop with, it was at San Diego Writers Inc. It's called something, that's what it's called now, but it's gone through several evolutions. And I live in San Diego. And I was working with Judy Reeves, who also has several writing books out there. And she was in Janet's workshop. And then she recruited me into Janet's group. And I was in Janet's group. And I think it was actually from that group, then you were a writer in residence at the New York State Summer Writers Institute. And then several other people started going there because in Janet's group. So I went because I do what everybody tells me to do. And so I went to New York for the summers for that conference. So conferences is another great way to meet people and become, get lots of writer friends and have lots of other teachers, expose yourself to a lot of different teachers. And then I became writer in residence at the New York State Writers Institute because I wanted to be like Sam. And then, and now I'm associate director of the New York State Summer Writers Institute. So, but yes, all of that to say, and then I also, one of my favorite things that, like Pam said, I love teaching. And that's just one of my very favorite things to do. So I also like to bake pie. That's why Sam is friends with me, I think so. But not that, okay.
I have a question actually from what, since we're going to put you on the spot as the writers group. So, and your piece is like How to Write a Novel in 20 Pies will be your next book, of which your hilarious and thoughtful lit up essay on writers group is part of that. A question from, and maybe you can help, from Gwen Hembrock, who's basically asking, how do you find the right group for you? And what do you do with feedback you might receive from other members of the group?
Ooh, well, the lit up essay explains how that was actually sort of a tragedy for me. Because I did have all of these very smart writers in the Janet group. It was just, I was blown away with the other writers in there. And I just thought they're all smarter and better looking than I am. And so I was just doing everything they said. And I ended up with a mess. My novel just became a complete and utter, just a stew. I didn't know it was coming or going. And so I had to step back and go to a few therapy sessions and then realized that I wasn't listening. I was listening to everything they were saying and I was putting everything in and I wasn't listening to my gut. And so none of the things they were saying were wrong. They were just things that I needed to look at what it meant in context with the work. And, as you could tell from Janet speaking, she says really brilliant things. And so there were a few things where she was like, you know, this character is not working here. So I was like, okay, I gotta take the character out. And really what I needed to do was look at why that character wasn't working right there. And that was the difference, you know, is like looking at it and knowing, because my gut was telling me that character belonged there, but just why and how and what was that all about. And finding right groups, you know, I think that's really important, because I think, you know, sometimes peer groups can be sort of the blind leading the blind, but not always. I mean, that depends on the group. And then, you know, finding a group like Janet's group is hard to find, and then being able to get into it sometimes can be really difficult. But most of the groups that I've seen develop, and some that I've been in, because like I said in my lit up essay that was part of about the writing groups, was I was something of a whore. I went to every writing group I possibly could and did everything they wanted me to do. But was a lot of classes, like if you take a class or go to these conferences, especially now with Zoom, you can do, you know, you can have a writing group that's based all over the world and meet regularly. And so places like classes, I feel like, or workshops are a place to meet people that are like-minded, that have maybe not necessarily similar work, but you know that you trust what they're going to tell you, and that you can have a conversation about what is supposed to go in your book. They understand your work and you understand theirs, because I feel like you really learn more from the other people's work than you do from your own when you're looking to see how theirs is critiqued. That's where I feel like we're so close to our own work. That's not to say we don't learn from our own work, but in a group, that's the setting. And then deadlines are so great. That's
well, so again, in the texts, there's so much information coming. I see so much on the chat and writers groups. So Samantha, that information of how to connect with Amy will be in the thread, because it's so helpful, and such a
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're going to have that information on Amy and a few others coming up at the end of the program.
Absolutely. And we are so looking forward to How to Write a Novel in 20 Pies when it comes out. Everybody is talking about pie in the chat. It's everything is, yeah.
All the panelists want you to bake us pies, Amy.
Okay, got it.
Thank you so much. And I think if you follow the chat at all, it's fun, because Pam Houston was saying that William Carlos Williams has said no thoughts but in things, in response to what Janet was saying. And then Marilyn Bohm has asked, is it too late for us old farts over 65 years old to get involved in writing classes? If so, where? So that takes me to, and it's kind of like, aha, writing perhaps over the age of 40. It kind of takes us to one theme that I like about our final guest, the fantastic Frances Mays, who needs no introduction, but I will give the 30-second introduction. And I want to say that almost 25 years ago, in 1996, Frances Mays published Under the Tuscan Sun. You may have heard of it. It was an instant bestseller about her spying and restoring an old farmhouse in Tuscany, 2.5 years on the New York Times bestseller list, translated into 52 languages, made into a movie starring Diane Lane. The trio, the Tuscany trilogy includes Bella Tuscany, Every Day in Tuscany, so many beloved books about Tuscany, which have many gorgeous photos also, and many recipes that I cry even to read. And she's also written acclaimed poetry and fiction, some drawn from her childhood southern home of Georgia. Her most recent novel, I believe, is Women in Sunlight, beautifully named. Just this spring, she had a giant book tour. See You in the Piazza was coming out in paperwork. Always Italy has also come out. And so COVID has made this more of a virtual tour, and we're so excited, and we can't believe that we have the amazing Frances Mays joining us. Hello.
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 It's wonderful to be here.
Yes.
It's nice to connect with California again. I still miss being there.
And right now, tell us where you are.
I'm in North Carolina. I wish I were in Italy, but I'm not. And I'm planning to go in October. So I hope I actually get there.
Fingers crossed. So if you could set aside, and there are many people watching who are either, readers, perhaps writers also. And I think that it's interesting that Under the Tuscan Sun comes out in 1996. So you are in your middle age, in your 50s when it comes out, and there's something such wonderful, and people loved it so much, and I wonder if one of the themes, I mean, I've been rereading it, is like the ability to reinvent in midlife. And I wonder how resonant that was for you, you know, kind of you're divorced, you're building this new farmhouse, restore the farmhouse, of what your journey was to write Under the Tuscan Sun and publish it.
I think the most startling reinvention was the reinvention of myself as a writer, because I'd always been a poet. I taught poetry at San Francisco State for years and years. My whole life was poetry and teaching, and you know, I published lots of books of poetry and thought that would be what I would do for my entire life. But somehow when I got to Italy and I bought this rundown house and started restoring it, I started writing more and more. I had this big blue notebook and I was putting postcards of art and menus and sketches and all kinds of things in this notebook, but I was also writing about discovering a new culture, learning new language, finding myself single after a long marriage, and all these things that just seemed like the lines wanted to keep on flowing. They didn't want to have line breaks. And that was amazing to me because I did not intend to become a prose writer. I was always, from the time I was 5 years old, in love with poetry. But I started writing these kind of articles and I suddenly realized I'm writing a book. This is going to be a book of prose. And I always loved the memoir form. So having grown up in the South too, I always have been interested in place and how place shapes you and how who you are is where you are and how a new landscape can begin to change you. So all these things kind of came together, my interest in memoir, my interest in place, and my inability to go back to poetry. So it was like some rhythm in the brain changed. I think you have to pay attention to those things. And I loved writing prose. I wrote Under the Tuscan Sun very spontaneously. And then, you know, I've written many, many, many books since then. And I've just been a natural fish in the water with prose. I've really loved the process.
And it seems, I mean, it's censor, and we've talked a little bit this hour about how the senses influence writers, and you look at the light, you talk so much about the quality of light in Tuscany, and it's like you are inhaling it and talking about it's like a fresco, it's like the blue of a blind person's eye. I mean, it's incredible, it's so painterly, so to feel what's happening.
Well, imagery, I think, is something you really learn from writing poetry, but for me, it's just a kind of natural connection with language to want to do what some Chinese poet said once, to make an image is to live twice. And I think that's true because when you're writing with your senses, you've had your experience yourself, and then you are recreating it in words, in sensory language. And I think that does give you kind of a sense of living twice. And I always thought, writing and teaching poetry, that if you learn imagery, you have a direct connection with your reader, because everybody almost has the same sensory feelings. So if you activate two sensory feelings in a sentence, your reader has no choice but to respond, because you connect on a physical sensory level, and it's very direct, very immediate. And to me, it's really the joy of writing, is that feeling of recreating something in your imagination or in your experience, and make it happen for a second time.
Well, you make it happen, but it is also the experience that we are there. You are creating something that's so relatable, but indelible and new. And that's, I think, one of the reasons people just love your books, even if they can't get to Tuscany, although many then did go. And I think that's particular as a perfect pandemic reading in this time in August, at a time we're so stir crazy. And when again, it's perfect.
Aren't we all?
So I want to go just for a moment to Women in Sunlight, where you've talked about, looking at these women. What inspired me was all these women travelers you've met in the piazza of Cortona. And, like there's one sitting with her cappuccino and notebook at a table under the clock tower. I know her. She's on a quest. She's my character, my reader, my friend. I wonder if there's something special about women traveling. Women decide to travel.
Yes. A lot of people come to my adopted town of Cortona, and I can tell they're on a quest. They're not just traveling for fun to go to the winery and out to lunch. They're there for a reason, and I so recognize that when I see them in the piazza. And I think that's one reason I wrote Women in Sunlight, because I wanted to give life to these women who were there for some reason having to do with making changes in their lives. And I think that's the secret behind a lot of travel, is that you want to make a change. You might not know what it is, but you feel something out there pulling you toward it. And that's something very important to pay attention to, is what is pulling you. What is pulling you? I feel that often, and it usually gets me in a lot of trouble, gets me into new directions. But the other reason for writing Women in Sunlight was a kind of tribute to friendship, because that's been one of the greatest joys of my life, has been my women friends. And I was having, this sense of getting older and seeing what was happening to a lot of women, seeing women prematurely shut down, not only women really, but a lot of people. They get this message when they get older that it's over, your shelf life's up, give it up, go to an assisted retirement active center or something like that. And I saw friends of mine beginning to consider things like that when, I'm ready to go off to Egypt, and I think, why not? So I wanted to give these older women a big choice and to let them have it. I gave my women characters everything they wanted, just about, because I think it's still possible at any age to make life-affirming, huge changes at the last minute, as Grace Paley said, enormous changes at the last minute. And I think those are possible. So the book was my tribute to friendship and to older women taking charge of their lives and doing something that might have wanted to do always, but then life interfered. You are on a path, and then you make certain choices and not others, and then down the chute you go into a whole life that you just might not have expected for yourself, for better or worse. So it was a chance for them to get back to the person they might have been when they were young, and to pursue those choices that they didn't make, and for those choices to actually work out.
And I think that is really fascinating, and certainly the lives of women at a certain midlife or beyond there's so many women. It's the biggest demographic in America anyway, and there's so much stuff happening, and to hear these stories are amazing. And I love this quote of like, why they wonder after family life ended, didn't more people banish loneliness and live together? So after the job of the family is done, so why don't women like go travel? And it's kind of like things. People can't part with their stuff, their mother's stuff, their attics, and their basements. We have a lot of stuff. that at the same point, it's kind of like, well, we're both sitting out. You have a lot more nicer stuff in your house than I do. But it's also, I think, and with the Under the Tuscan Sun, there's such a thing about houses and homes, of houses in your work being extensions of ourselves or new places to go, so that it's not all stuff. Stuff is bad, but there's other things that are beautiful also in homes. I mean, like our homes and extensions of ourselves.
Houses are huge metaphors for me. You know, in Jungian philosophy, the house is an extension of yourself. When you dream it, it's the rooms or different parts of you. It's so true. Houses figure very much in my psyche. And while I've been confined here in North Carolina during this virus, I've actually started writing a book called Belonging. And it's about houses. It's about many kinds of places I've lived in and thoughts I've had about home and about moving, what moving means. And it's been kind of, although I haven't been able to concentrate that well, it's been my main thing I've been thinking about during this time is the connection of a sense of home, a sense of belonging, and my opposite sense, which I've always had all my life, which has actually usually pulled me toward the airport rather than home. Travel. I started traveling as soon as I could click the buttons on the suitcase. And I guess since I stopped teaching, what I've done instead of teaching is travel. I've done so much travel in the past 15 years and can't wait to get back to it.
My final question, it's unpremeditated, but I'm thinking sort of where you are, you're a couple hours ahead of ours. What's for dinner?
My husband's making beef curry, so that should be good. And earlier I made a big corn saute with squash and red peppers and onions, and that should be pretty good too.
Oh, and so they're from your garden there?
We have a huge vegetable garden. That's been one of the pleasures of staying at home. I picked about 12 gorgeous tomatoes this morning. So that, you know, there have been some lovely parts of this quarantine, this long quarantine, but I'm ready for it to end.
Absolutely, and go back to Italy. Well, thank you so much, the great Frances May, and the two gorgeous books that are out now. You know, I'll see you in the Piazza, right? And that is paperback, but Always Italy is such a gorgeous book. It's got,
thank you.
It's just a thing to have and cradle now in this pandemic, and wish for better times, which are coming. So thank you so much for joining us, the great Frances.
Ciao. Ciao,
have
ciao.
a lovely dinner.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. To you, Samantha. That was magical.
I just want to have dinner with Frances sometime, one day. Just let's go have dinner with Frances, and then Amy can pie for dessert. And
Thank you all so much.
Ciao,
ciao.
You know, and speaking about that really quickly, everyone, I'm just so thrilled to have been able to do this series. And I wanted to give you some places to go, some resources coming up here. There is the Southern California Writers Association at socalwriters.org is a place to look into if you're looking for writing workshops and reading events. Maddie Margarita is one of the board members there, and she also runs a reading series called Lit Up OC, which is a Facebook group, and it's a great place to connect, and they have readings and discussions about literature, some writing groups, fantastic, and I believe it's all free. There's also a thriving writing workshop in San Bernardino County, the Inlandia Institute, which someone just recommended to me. I don't have any resources for that, but just Google Inlandia Institute. And as always, there's Pam Houston's amazing writing by writers.org. I'm not saying that because I teach in it sometimes. It truly is an amazing program. And that's, I think, it for my leads, but not it for my thank yous.
Can I just mention one quick thing before your thank yous? We also wanted to note our colleague thinking of things in Southern California, Annabelle Gurwitch. I've put her
Right.
name in the chat. She's been doing in the pandemic something called Writers Writing During Zoom. So if you're really lonely and going nuts, you could probably visit her website to get her, like, where it's like, and I've been doing it and it's fantastic. It's like sometimes you get up, turn it on, and just people are just writing. It's like a writing room, but it's on, and it's
And
indoors.
so you can have that community, right? I mean, isn't that the point? You can have that community.
Yeah,
So important. Oh, and in the chat, the California Writers Club, Orange County, please check the chat. I'm sure it's alive with other possibilities. But really, I got to thank everybody for supporting this series these 8 weeks, because what you're doing is supporting local journalism, and we need it more than ever right now. And above all, finally, Sandra. Without your brilliance and your generosity, we could not have done this, and we could not have done it as well as we've done. So thank you. You have been an amazing hostess and supporter.
It's my pleasure, girlfriend, and it was fun to chat. It's been totally fun. It's been quite an adventure, and with luck, we'll have, I mean, just what a journey, what an adventure, and our viewers are the best. We see your comments. You guys are the best.
Thank you, and again, check those comments, and hopefully we'll see you again in some incarnation in the future. Meanwhile, go to scng.com or your local SCNG newspaper to find out more events. Oh, we've got a screen. Okay, thanks so much. Ciao, everyone. Mwah.